Welcome, investigator. Evil is on the rise. Crime is escalating. Our mission is to eliminate the crime by exposing evil, examine why it manifests, and highlight the brave souls that confront it every day. Join us as we work together to bring justice to every victim. Welcome to All Things Crime. Here's your host, Jared Bradley.
Hey everybody, it's Jared. Welcome to another episode of All Things Crime. Today we have a special guest for you. I'm telling you, this guy's the man. Give you a little background. First of all, Trevor Houston, thanks for coming on, buddy. And got to give you give everybody a little bit of a background here. So back in the COVID days, everybody remembers those, I'm sure. I don't know about you, Trevor, but I found myself after all the honeydews and everything was over, I was sitting around going, how in the world am I going to reach some of my customers? I got to make sure my day is productive. So I started looking at ways to take advantage of LinkedIn and other platforms that people were on. And so I eventually landed in this video marketing class. And as it turned out, you had taken that class, 6 weeks or a few months before I did. And so you were kind of in the group and some of the pods that they call them kind of established. And I'll tell you, the thing that amazed me about that whole time period was the people that, and we had talked about this earlier, when I was down there in the Dallas area. And man, you don't ever really expect to meet people like face to face when you meet them on social media, other than people that you've already met in the past. But I think over time we've kind of developed a pretty good relationship. And, there's others obviously like Ravi and, people that, and I don't know if you saw, but I actually met up with Ravi when I was in London a couple of years ago. So that was the coolest experience, to start meeting these people that I've actually met on, LinkedIn, especially being a professional platform. Anyway, that's kind of how we got connected. And I was always really impressed with you, especially because of what you were doing. And initially I thought you were just the kind of the podcast host of Who You Know. And that's, by the way, we're going to put all these links and everything in the show notes. So everybody, if you get a chance to go visit Trevor's podcast, tell you what, you've had some huge, amazing guests on there. And it's just awesome stuff. So, but one of the things that really impressed me was as we got to know each other a little bit, and I was, interacting with a lot of your stuff on LinkedIn, you shared a little bit about your story. And that blew me away, dude. I don't know how many people actually, tell you really how impressive it is that where you are and who you are. And that, I think that's the most important thing, is who you've become compared to who you were. Mm-hmm. And dude, I'm telling you, the hole that you have crawled out of based on what you were digging when you were a teenager, I think is just absolutely amazing. So with that background, I hope that makes sense to everybody. We initially just met online, and then what was it, a month ago that I was down in Dallas that we were able to have lunch together, and man, just, I learned a lot of stuff even then about you. And so number one, I would highly encourage anybody to, as you're developing relationships, especially online relationships with other professionals, whoever, whatever you do. But it's amazing, even though Trevor isn't in the true crime space. By the way, I got his card right here. See that, right? And man, the CEO and founder, ClearPath Wealth Strategies. So the crazy thing is, I didn't even know that's what you did. I thought you were just, all you did was the podcast. I mean, your podcast is so huge that
yeah.
I was like, then I found out you do these wealth strategies, and I'm like, this dude is just all over the place, man. You're like a one-man wonder.
Well, I appreciate that. Yeah. So yeah, I think big takeaway there, number one is relationships online. right? I've met so many people, in person after years of interacting with them online, and it's amazing. It's like you feel like you can't believe it's the first time you actually met,
Yeah.
in person, and you're like, wow, that's so crazy. But yeah, I had a little bit of a wild start to my journey, and so I appreciate you noticing that. I had a pretty crazy childhood, and got me in a lot of trouble, and I dug myself a pretty deep hole, and I've had to dig myself out of that hole a few times. And yeah, so I've had to learn how to really operate within some looseness that I created in my life early on. And I'm actually writing a book called Breaking Chains. And, it's basically a story on, what I went through, my background, and then how to overcome that. What are the steps? And because I looked and I was like, you know what? There is a blueprint in my life. And there are steps. There are things that you can do. And I didn't necessarily know that they were there until I really went back and reflected. And I was like, wow, you know what? All these little things, these are the steps that I took. And I think if someone does these 12 simple steps, it's like anybody can transform their life. And it doesn't necessarily mean you have to have been like, in jail and all that kind of stuff like I was. But I think if you're not where you want to be, you can transform your life. You have control. And so there were some steps that I took to help me get there. And that's what the book's about. So I'm real excited about that. And got a lot of things going on right now.
Well, for sure. And, just like I said, just your podcast and then what you do full time with your wealth strategies and now you're writing a book. Holy cow, man. And then, I don't know about any of my listeners that are out there, but Trevor runs around with a camp trailer on top of his truck. Just, he is ready to go rock into the outdoors at any time. He's even got a little ladder so he can crawl up into into that tent, man. Anybody that's willing to do that, man, you've got my vote. So that's pretty awesome.
Roof Nest, okay? Shout out Roof Nest. They're a pretty cool little thing, you put it on top of your truck or your car, and it just pops up, and it's got a mattress in there. It's got a little ladder. You go up there. It's kind of like being in a tree house,
Yeah.
And so the back of my truck's full of camping gear. I'm ready to go at any time. It's awesome.
Yeah, that's the coolest, man. Yeah, it's I don't know where you go camping, in the Dallas area, but dude, if you ever want some serious mountain camping, you need to come up here to Utah, and I'll take you up into some good spots up there.
Awesome.
Yeah. So Trevor, I want to get into kind of, and the whole reason I wanted to have you on isn't just to brag about, your podcast stuff. It's like we discussed, earlier, where you go and what you do in life is whatever your intent is, that's where you're headed. And I just think that there's so many people that when they get themselves in trouble and they start down the wrong path, they really don't do it on purpose. It just kind of happens that way. And so there's so many people out there that I think have followed kind of the same path you did when you were a teenager. And then, but because they don't really understand, like you said, your 12 steps, and it's an awesome, I can't wait to see that book, but also just to, when you try to crawl yourself out of it, it's all about intention and doing things on purpose and, figuring out where you actually are and then setting the goal of where you want to be and then actually getting there. But, it's easier said than done, of course, but, maybe to start, why don't you kind of tell people kind of what your life was like as a teenager and how you ended up in the hole you did?
Yeah, absolutely. So, growing up, divorce really kind of messed up my family pretty good. It was pretty rough divorce. I was probably around 5 or 6 years old when they split, and like I remember my mom was disabled, and she couldn't work. She got in a car accident, hurt her back pretty good. Couldn't work, and really kind of dove into like alcohol and drugs and things like that. And because she couldn't work, she couldn't, in the divorce, she got the house and stuff like that. And so she couldn't really pay for the mortgage, pay the bills. We were on all the government programs, welfare and food stamps, and she had a disability check and all that kind of stuff. But it still wasn't enough. So next thing you know, we got roommates come in the house. And it's like they got worse and worse and worse over time. And I grew up with all kinds of different backgrounds and different ethnicities and all kinds of different stereotypes, which is also a blessing, because I will tell you that later on in life, I figured out that, it's a blessing because I can communicate with all kinds of different types of people. I can relate to all kinds of different types of people. I see good in people. I see bad in people. Like, I figure out, we're all broken. Just trying to figure it out, just trying to make it through this thing. So I can relate and I can empathize with a lot of different type of people, and I can communicate, which is great. And it's a blessing. Just not everybody has that. But I grew up with all these different types of people, all these different stereotypes. And these were the male role models. I mean, and these were drug dealers and Crips. I grew up with a set of Crips. Some of their names were Paco, Flaco, Scarface, Kilo. Just give you an idea of the types of folks I was running around with. And, so I kind of gravitated towards, and when I say every stereotype, we had the thug life, we had the gothic, like all black, fingernail polish, trench coat wearing, we had the heavy metal, like, headbangers. I mean, we had the ravers that were doing all the ecstasy and all that kind of stuff. And anyway, I had every type of stereotype. I gravitated because, me in my teens, I kind of gravitated towards the thug life. Like, I was like the rap music, thug life, criminal stuff. Like, I was wearing, FUBU and thought I was Eminem, okay, running around. And, yeah, so I got in a lot of trouble. I was very angry during that time in my life, very bitter. And I had a problem with authority. Like, you couldn't tell me anything. And I would get angry. And I would, like, clap back at you if you tried to tell me something. Like, nobody could tell me anything. Are you kidding me? Like, I was so angry at that time in my life. And it's the thug life mentality, It's like a survival mechanism. I don't know. But so it got me in a lot of trouble. I got in a lot of fights. I was very physical because I was a big kid. I was 6 foot tall when I was 13 years old. I was taller than everybody. Big kid. And so, I would get in a lot of fights. And I remember there was this situation. I was in like 7th grade. And there was a kid at school that I didn't care for very much. And, he sat down at our table, me and the other kids, and he sat down at this table. And, I'm picking on him. Honestly, I was a bully. I was a little bit of a bully. I'm being real. So I was picking on him. And I went and dumped a tray of like salt, and like after I'd eaten off of it and had like all kinds of, crumbs and stuff on it, I went and dumped it over in his hair. We're all laughing. Ha 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 ha. Right. And then he starts opening salt packets and like puts it on a tray and like comes and does it back to me. And I was like, oh no, heck no, you did not just do that. Right. Like, I think about the stupid kid stuff. Right. But so I then took that tray and I started to hit him with it. Okay. And I'm at school. Right. This is like a school fight type stuff. Right. Just stupid kids. Right. Well, I didn't want to get in trouble. I saw a teacher coming, so I put the tray down, and I'm like, we're going to handle this outside of school. Okay. Well, I get on the bus. We ride the same bus. And his stop is like one stop before mine. We're riding the bus. Everybody's instigating the fight. I'm instigating it. Oh, I'm going to beat you up, all this and that. Okay. Well, we get off on his bus stop, go to his house. He runs home, goes to his house, and I knock on the door, like pop, 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 pop. He answers the door, and He answers it up and goes, "Faggot," closes the door, locks it. And I'm like, oh, hell no. Knock on the door again. This time, his little brother and sister answers the door. And I'm like 13 at the time. He's 13. The little brother and sister are probably like, around 8 years old, something like that. Okay. And I'm like, hey, I need to talk to your brother. And they're like, yeah, we don't like him either. Da, 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 da. They were ragging on their brother. You know how kids do, right? They were ragging on their brother. Like, yeah, he's such a da, 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 blah, blah, blah. Like, they let me in along with 3 other girls that got off the bus with me. So me and these 3 girls, we go into the house. And I walk in, and when I walked in the house, he walked out with a can of hairspray and maced me in my eyes with hairspray. Which I look back and I'm like, man, he's afraid. He's scared. He's protecting himself. I get it. I just walked in his house. You know what I mean? But he sprayed me, and my eyes just went blood red, and I had to like rip my eyelids open because they were like glued shut from the hairspray. I mean, I was just in like, if you ever got a little bit of hairspray in your eyes, man, imagine getting maced with it. Chemicals, it burned, right? So I just went into a rage. I mean, I was already pissed off when I got there. I was already there to, fight him. And I got in a fight with him, and he ran into his parents' bedroom. I kicked the door down, right? He locked the door. I kicked it down. I just kept fighting him until he, stopped fighting back. And I left. And honestly, my mindset at that time when I was 13 years old, I was like, I'm King Kong. I was like, man, and I remember going home and bragging about it to my other friends. And next day I got picked up. I went to school, and they picked me up. The police came in and arrested me, took me in. Burglary to a habitation, just breaking and entering with the intent to steal or hurt somebody, And what's interesting about the story is they said that I broke in, or I pushed my way in. I was there to fight him, for sure. I was there for that purpose. But I didn't break in or push my way in. I was let in and then got maced when I walked in. But regardless of that, I mean, I know I was in the wrong now. I look back and I'm like, of course I was clearly in the wrong. But that got me put in juvenile detention, and got a felony for that. I was 13 years old. I was a felon at 13. And in and out of court system, in and out of juvenile, and got probation and this, that, and the other. And then I violated my probation. And I was faced at that point with 5 years in jail. I was at 16 at that point. They were going to put me in jail until I was 21. And the judge looked at me and he was like, hey, so look, man, we gave you a shot. You blew it, but I'm going to give you a choice. You can either spend 5 years in jail, or we know your mom's house it's not suitable for you. It's not working. You can move to your father's. So of course I'm like, Daddy, like, come on,
All of a sudden, Dad's your best friend, man.
Absolutely. Which, in all transparency, at that point in my life, I didn't want my father. I didn't want discipline. He was always there. I just didn't want him. Because at my mom's, I got to run the show. I got to do whatever I wanted. I was the man of the house, It just wasn't working, though. Obviously, I was getting in trouble. So, yeah, I moved to my father's house, and that was the first step in the 12 steps that I talk about, is change your environment. Now, I didn't make that as a choice willingly, right? I'm super grateful for that. You know what I mean? That, like, I was forced into that choice. I didn't want my father at that point, but I got a second chance at life. The judge found some leniency and even gave me that as an option. I should not have even had that as an option. Like, he could have clearly and easily just thrown me away. And I think my life would be completely different today. And so I feel for those people out there that don't get that second chance, I was gifted a second chance. And so I got to change my environment. I got to change schools. I got to change the people I was hanging around with, right? I got to change my clothes. I got to change everything, like a complete identity shift. And what a gift. But that's really the first step, if you ask me, is you got to change your environment. I mean, you think about a plant, a seed, where being planted. You got to have good soil, good nourishment, good light and water, and you got to be, we're a product of our environment. And so if you don't have that nourishment, you're not going to be the best version of yourself for sure. And so that's exactly what was going on at my mom's. I was not in the right environment.
Yeah.
And so I had to change that.
So
that was really kind of the first step, but that led up to kind of where we're at today.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, again, back to, if you are just learning who Trevor Houston is, you would, and you look on your profile and you see the businesses you have running and all that. And then you hear this story. It's just like, man, those two just don't match up. It's like, what is the bridge? It's like the super golden gate, man, to connect those two worlds, because you would never expect that someone like you with where you're at would be. I mean, it's not like you've made it in life. I mean, I know you still have tons of stuff that you want to do in life, and you should, but still, based on where you are right now, that is such a chasm between those two. And I want to go back to one of the things you said when you were describing, once you finished that fight and you got picked up, you got put in probation or whatever, and then you said you broke your probation. So what was it that didn't get through to you that first time? So when the cops came and they picked you up at school, right?
Yep, picked me up at school.
Wow.
I was in orchestra class. Okay, I played the stand-up bass, and I got this bass. And here comes the cops. I'm like, oh crap!
Oh, that's awesome, man. You're in.
Isn't that awesome?
You're in orchestra. Okay. Yeah, it's not like you were.
I got arrested in orchestra class.
It's not like you were in gym class, working out, pushing iron or anything. No, you were in orchestra. That's okay. Yeah. What was it that you think didn't resonate deep enough to get you to snap out of, the funk that you were in? You just didn't take it serious, or what was it that you think was lacking that first time that made you break your probation?
Yeah. So life at home, again, with my mom was really rough. We didn't have a lot of money. Matter of fact, we didn't have a lot of anything. So my mom never really had a car that was working. I mean, so that was number one. She wasn't taking me to my probation officer, and that's actually why they came, because I wasn't seeing the probation officer for like 6 months or something like that. And but yeah, life at home was really, like, there was a lot of times we didn't have running water or lights, electricity. I remember stealing water from the neighbor's hose and putting it in like a 5-gallon bucket, and taking it home and pouring in the toilet just so we could flush the toilet, things like that. We were kind of like almost like camping inside, if you will. Okay. Propane grill and propane heater in the winter and things like that. I remember, like smoking weed with my mom and like drinking 40s with the homies, like under candlelight. Okay. Like, and then we had this thing happen. We had a black mold at our house. We had a flood, and black mold kind of got in the house. And I remember them gutting the house. And like my mom, God bless her, I don't know what she did with the money. She got insurance money to put this house back together. But let me just tell you, it never got put back together. So, I mean, we were on concrete floors and holes in the walls, and I mean, studs everywhere. I mean, it was just like living in a crack house. I mean, it was really, really bad. And what's crazy is we're in this suburb. I'm in Allen, Texas, of all places. There's like a lot of money, suburb, like affluent people everywhere. And we're like, got the crack house on the block. Like, it was not good environment. Again, I slept in a bookshelf. Okay. I didn't have a bed because, again, all of our stuff got gutted out of the house, got thrown away because it's all contaminated, right? Black mold. And this bookshelf, I like knocked it over, took all the shelves out of it. So it was just a big box. Okay. And I threw a bunch of like old clothes and towels and crap in there, just anything that was soft. And then threw a futon mattress on top of it. And then, you know, I had to make it look good. So I put some Christmas lights around that joker. Okay. I had the best looking bookshelf in the house. You know,
you're going to start a new bed trend there.
Yeah, man. It was awesome. But like, I think back again, my environment was it just was not conducive for anything positive, right? There was nothing positive coming out of that house. Okay. And so, and again, my mom wasn't taking me to see my probation officer. So of course they came and picked me up. It was like 2 days before Christmas. They come pick me up. And I remember the night before, because we're like off for Christmas break, right?
Mm-hmm.
From school. And like, we were getting messed up, man. Just getting high and drunk and all this kind of stuff. I'm hungover.
And you're 16 at this point.
I'm like 16 years old.
Oh.
I mean, we were getting wrecked the night before. And matter of fact, this is the crazy part. At this time, we had some like gothic kind of heavy metal type people that were living with us. They made this mace. Okay. It's a stick with like nails all hanging out of it. And this is the kind of craziness we were doing, man. Back then, it was like, who can take the most hits? Who can take the most pain? You take the most, and that means you're a man. If you can take the most, so stupid. I'm thinking about it now. And we would trade licks on our knee, just and like this thing had nails in it, man. It's like sticking each other. Anyway, that was the night before, getting high and drunk and hitting each other with a stupid mace, like idiots, right? I wake up that next morning and I hear again, police at the door. And I'm hungover, like, my legs like dead and it's covered in blood. And like, I wake up and I'm just like out of it. And they tell me to put my clothes on. I'm, taking me back to jail. And I remember like I put my pants on. And inside of my pants, I had a joint in there. Okay. But they didn't search me because they watched me get dressed. Right. So then it dawned on me when I'm in the cop car and we're driving to the station. I'm like, oh my God, I got weed on me. Like, and we're going to the station. Like, that's not good. Right. That could be a whole nother charge.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I go into like panic mode. My hands are behind my back like this. And so I reach around. Luckily, I got long arms. So I reach around and I pull it out of the pocket and I shoved it down in the cop's seat. I shove it down in the seat. But man, I mean, this is the environment I was in. So to answer your question, yeah, it was, I'm grateful again, though. I'm grateful. I'm so grateful because like I needed that slip up. I needed that. I needed to go back to jail. I did. And I'm so grateful that the judge, found some leniency on me to give me at least another opportunity. I think he probably saw me and was like, man, if he knew what was going on, he probably, was like, okay, we need to figure something out with this kid.
I'm sure they knew a lot more than what you think they did. But
I bet. Yeah.
I mean, most of the cops that I know, they, in circumstances like that, they have a whole folder and they know what's going on. But
well, I remember I got picked up at the house by was it Child Protective Services, CPS? And because we had some there was some other stuff going on at the house too. There was a gay couple living at the house, and grown man in his 40s, and this is the part that blows my mind. There was a kid he was like 16 years old. I don't know if they met on like a chat room or something, but they were like living. And I think back and I'm like thinking with my mom, like, Mom, you let this guy molest this kid at the house. You know what I mean? Like, oh my God. Anyways, I remember getting picked up by Child Protective Services. They're asking, you know, had he ever touched you? Da 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 da, blah 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 blah, all this kind of stuff. And I remember just being like I didn't want to talk to him. I'm like, hell, get away from me. Like, again, I had a problem with authority.
Yeah.
I was like, they were trying to pick me up, Child Protective Services. I'm like, I'm not going with you. I'm not going with you. You know?
Not a child.
All that crazy. Yeah, I'm like, screw you. You know, and but I ended up going with them. I had to.
Yeah.
And they like interrogated me essentially to try to figure out what was going on. So yeah, I bet there was a lot more that they knew. They knew the environment. Again, it was messed up. So,
well, again, yeah, I appreciate you sharing all that, man. I know, you know, even probably thinking about it, it's probably difficult at times, but you know, again, our background makes it that's kind of who we are. And that gives you, you know, fast forward now to when you started actually, you know, climbing out of that hole that you had dug all those years as a teenager. And, you know, part of it is the deeper the hole, I think the harder you have to fight to actually get out of it. And that creates, you know, it's like the refiner's fire, you know, that's what makes a sword. And I think it contributed to, well, I know it contributed in a massive way to who you are now. And so let's talk about how it, you know, once you got turned around a little bit, you moved to your dad's house. What happened there that really started changing things?
So, you know, at my dad's house, okay, my dad wasn't wealthy or anything like that. I mean, he wasn't like, you know, but compared to where I was at, it definitely was. Like, you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, my dad had food, lights, water, you know, like
stuff that we would consider basic necessities. I mean, it's just
absolutely
nirvana.
2-bedroom house, but it was like, it was nice. It was clean. It was like decorated. It like, you know what I mean? He took care of his stuff. It was like, and so like, okay, I'm in a different environment. I'm in a clean environment. Okay. I got a bed. You know what I mean? Like I'm out of the bookshelf. I like have a mattress, you know, like, okay, cool. Running water, lights, good. Check, check, check. Okay. All the basics, clothes, you know, my dad took me like to Old Navy. Okay. Like I was wearing FUBU, Thug Life, thought I was like Eminem. Okay. All of a sudden now I'm wearing like preppy clothes, like wearing like Old Navy, but they're brand new clothes. And I was like, cool. Like I wasn't wearing these hand-me-down, you know, things. So I'm like, got brand new clothes. I remember going to the store and getting to shop for myself. Like, wow, he gave me like get some new clothes. Cool. And then I got to work with him. And my dad was a business owner. He owned a painting business and he would paint houses and he did like some really, really cool work. Okay. Like he didn't just paint, you know, houses, you know, whatever color. Like he would do texture and marbleizing and faux finishes and all that stuff when that was hot. There was a time when like that stuff, faux finishes and all of that was hot. And, you know, so he would be working in these like millionaire houses, you know, big mansions. And I remember it was the first time like getting up early, the rise and grind, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Get to learn how to wake up, and I'd watch my dad. He's drinking coffee, watching the news, you know. He'd get me up, put on my paint suit, get on the job site. And I remember just working hard and like taking something that was ugly and transforming. And like you put in that hard day's work and like that sense of pride at the end of the day, you know, working with your hands and like creating something. It was like, wow. And like gave me an opportunity to save, you know? And my dad would always do some really cool things. He would like give me little incentives. So like when I needed to buy a car, you know, I'm 16 at this time and I need to buy a car. And so, well, first of all, it helped me the saving helped me get off of probation because I had all this restitution, all these fees and all this stuff I had to pay, right? I mean, I was in a hole and like a financial hole at 16 and I had to pay all that off. Okay. Finally get off probation. So I'm off paper now. I'm like, yes, cool. And I remember my dad would do some incentives, like again, to buy a car. It was, I'll match you dollar for dollar. Okay. Because he wanted to incentivize me to save and not just blow money. Right. So he gave me the opportunity to earn, number one, and then incentivized me to save, number two. Kind of like getting a match on your 401k. Like, heck yeah, I'm going to match that. I'm going to max that out. You know what I mean? Like, I'm going to max it out. He would give me that incentive. And so I bought a car. And he knew I was good at saving. So then he, when I turned 18, he co-signed for me on a car. And that was huge because that helped me build my credit. Right. So, I mean, he helped me more than I can tell you. I mean, my dad really, I owe my life, you know, and I always tell people it was my heavenly father sending me to see my earthly father, you know. And so I really owe so much to him, but I still had some looseness. Look, it wasn't like an overnight shift for me. I remember debates with my father, literally sitting down at the kitchen table, having debates about smoking weed. I'm like, man, weed's not bad. Alcohol's so bad compared to weed. Man, come on, man. You know, like having debates with my dad about it. And
oh, geez.
Like, no, this is not happening. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, that brings up what was that first night? So you just are moving over to your dad's house from your mom's house. You're going from that, you know, crack house environment, living in a bookshelf. That's the greatest story in the world I've ever heard, man. By the way, the bookshelf bed, it's classic. But you're moving from that environment over to your dad's house. You know, sounds like a pretty small house, but it's clean. Like you said, running water. That first night, I'm sure there was some kind of a come to Jesus meeting that you guys had of saying, okay, I'm bringing you in, son, but this is what's going to happen. And this is what is not going to happen. What was that like?
You know, honestly, I wish I could remember. I really wish I could remember that night. That would have been a good memory to have. Honestly, I can't remember. I can't remember if we sat down and like went over the do's and the don'ts and like,
well, maybe it was too much. Maybe it was just too much for that night, but I'm sure, you know, maybe that particular night, he probably just brought you in and said, hey, son, let's just go to bed and, you know, figure this out in the morning. But
yeah, I do remember there were some things like, you know, I remember I had a little, like a curfew as far as like, you know, and I remember I couldn't go to my mom's for a while. There was a long time I couldn't go back. Couldn't even go visit. I couldn't see the friends that I had.
That was based on
couldn't hang out
your
with them.
dad.
I think that was based. Yeah, that's a good question. I think that was based on my dad. If I'm remembering correctly, I can't remember if that was a court thing or not. But I just remember couldn't do that. Had to, and we tried. Oh man, let me tell you something. Because me and my friends, we were like, I mean, these are like my brothers. I mean, I still have some connection with a couple of them that have changed their lives actually, which is another miracle that a couple of them ended up changing their life. Not all of them did, but
yeah.
But yeah, I remember it was like this resistance because gosh, man, those were like my brothers. And like, if you remember when you were a teenager, your friends at that time were like, you're just so close, man. Like just so close. And it was like, we tried to figure out how to see each other. Yeah. And, but yeah, I remember that was a thing. I had to get into church. And, but that was like almost almost like a forced church situation. Again, I was like, I had to go, which was good. I'm not, it was good actually, but it wasn't until later on in life that I kind of accepted Jesus like on my own.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I made the decision later in life.
I think that's pretty much the case for everybody. I mean, it's
sure
when you're a kid, even just being a teenager, I'm not sure there's some, but I think it's pretty rare that kids have the mental and the spiritual maturity to really understand it. But being in that environment, I think even getting them there, and maybe they'll pick up something, and that's kind of our attitude with our kids. It's
100%.
Yeah, but it's
put them in the right environment, like again, put them in the right environment. Like your environment means so much. The people you hang around with, that's why I like the show, the Who You Know show. It's not like, listen, the people you spend your time with, it's, they say you're the average of the top 5 people you associate with or something like that. But, and it's so true. It's so true. So, so I got that second chance with my dad. My dad's working on me. Okay. He's working on me, trying to turn this thing around. And, I still, there was, again, still some looseness. And, I remember, I got a job in sales at Harley Davidson. And, that was really cool. And, actually, hold on. Let me rewind real quick. So I got in sales, and I was working at Sears before that, and I was saving money. Okay. And like, I was in a scarcity mindset still. Okay. Cause again, I came from poverty. Like we didn't have money. So I'm stacking it up. Okay. And, I think by the time I was like 20 years old, I had like 20 grand saved up. And, I remember my stepmom looked over me because she knew I'd been saving and stuff. She looked over me and she's like, Trevor, how much money you got? And I was like, I don't know, like 20 grand or something. And I thought I was broke. At 20 years old with 20 grand, I'm like, that's broke. And she looked at me and she's like, you got like 20 grand? Oh, no. Like, basically, hey, it's time.
Yeah.
It's time to launch, right? Like, I was 20 years old. It's like, it's time. And so my dad came and he's like, hey, we're going to start charging you rent. Okay. But what we're going to do is, we're going to charge you rent, but we're going to take that and we're going to put it into an account. And when you leave, you can use that money for, furniture or whatever you need. Right. So, but we're going to start charging you rent. Oh, crap. So that forced me to go out there and like start looking at apartments. So, I mean, I did not pay him 1 month rent because I was out. I was like, if I'm going to pay you, I might as well get an apartment.
A little more freedom there.
Yeah. So moved out. Then I started working at Harley Davidson. This is 2008, 2009. I got, you're talking about the Great Recession. You're talking about, the economy and the dump, layoffs, all of that. I ended up getting let go from Harley Davidson. And the next real story in my journey that I think is important was when I went back to work in the auto industry. Mm-hmm. And this was the first time I found something that I was actually good at. As immediately when I got there, I became the #1 producer there and was just crushing it. And I had a mentor, my sales manager. He was pouring into me. I mean, again, product of your environment. He was pouring into me. We became like Bill Belichick and Tom Brady. Like he would call the play. He was the coach and I would go run the play. Okay. And I'm bringing home the trophy. Boom, boom, boom. Making some serious cash for being, 23, 24 years old. I was making $150K a year, making more than my dad, making more than anybody I knew. I was just, making a lot of money for that age. And like bought a house by the time I was 24, and I don't know, it just kind of got me off to a good start. But what I will say, the reason why this is so important in the story was I look back and I go, okay, well, what was it? Where was the shift? Because again, I was still getting in a lot of trouble. I'm still not getting a lot of trouble, but there was still some looseness in there in my early 20s. What shifted? And what shifted was I found a positive place to channel my energy. I found an obsession, a positive obsession. And it was the auto industry. Because for the first time in my life, I found something I was good at. Because remember, I was told I was a screw up. I was told I was never going to amount to nothing. I was, like the cards were kind of stacked up against me. And here I am. Not only am I good at something, but I'm the best. Like I was dominating in that industry. I was just crushing it. And I was like, so I found something I'm good at. So I dove in. I became a student of this game. And I just was like, obsessed with it. And so people would still call me and like, Friday night, hey, you want to come out? Let's go drinking, whatever. I'm like, no, man, are you crazy? Tomorrow's game day. It's Saturday. Tomorrow's game day. Like I'm going to sell 3 cars, get to do a hat trick tomorrow. You know what I mean? And no, hell no. Like, again, I found a positive obsession.
Yeah.
Where drugs and alcohol was the positive, was a negative obsession.
Yeah.
This was my positive outlet, And so I think that's another important lesson for somebody that's like, okay, you're wanting to change your life. You need to find something to be absolutely obsessed with. What is it? For me, it was the auto industry. What is it for you? What are you passionate about that you can just dive into and just devote all your energy to? Because again, you're putting your energy somewhere.
Oh, yeah.
If you're just like, what are you doing with your time? You're going to get high and play video games all day and just hang out and do nothing? What a waste. I think about the time I wasted,
Jeez. Isn't that the truth,
It's
man?
crazy.
But Trevor, I, as you're telling your story, I'm listening to it and I'm like, you know what? Boys especially, I think, I'm a huge fan of, well, there's a number of people online, but I can't remember who exactly said it, but basically he was saying it doesn't matter what species it is. If you look at males, young males, if they do not have some kind of a dominant male figure that will keep them in line, it doesn't matter if it's deer, if it's bighorn sheep, bear, whatever, if they do not have that role model that keeps them in line, they will become feral and essentially, even become so feral that they can't even integrate into their society. And it's almost like, in fact, a number of years ago, I don't know what triggered it, but I did a series of episodes on Lord of the Flies. Everybody's familiar with that movie.
Yeah.
And, where you have just these young kids, I don't know.
Just go crazy.
Yeah. And they establish this society initially, but then eventually they start going, moving into these little groups, and eventually they start isolating, the weaker kids. And, by the end of the movie, they're like literally out to kill this kid. So, but that kind of feral type of an attitude all comes from the lack of leadership from some kind of an older male. And it's also interesting, especially in the movie where, I'm sure you've seen the movie where, they're tracking the kid down on the beach and they're about to kill him. And then all of a sudden some adult men show up and just, it's over. It's all of a sudden everything's shifted and they snap out of their feral mindset. Well,
so good.
If you think about your story, and I think most kids that end up in trouble, I bet there's a common denominator, and that is probably that they do not have the guidance that they need to make those kind of decisions. When you're screwing up, you think about all those times when you were 13. If your dad had showed up at that kid's house when you were there to fight him, how different would things have been? Would you have kicked down their, the master bedroom door? I would say probably not. And I think about my dad. I mean, he grew up on a ranch in Idaho, and, from the time the kid was 8, he was up at 4 a.m. milking cows and, doing that kind of, the heavy labor stuff that you were talking about when you're painting. And I'm trying to envision myself debating with my dad at the kitchen table about the benefits of weed. And I like,
oh my gosh.
I don't think that wouldn't have gone very well, but
you know what's interesting about that? It's so funny to me. I think about it now, like my mindset, as a 16-year-old to my mindset now. And I look back and I'm like, oh my gosh, what an idiot. And like, there were so many arguments that I was like, they should legalize weed and da-da-da-da-da. And they're actually doing a lot of this stuff now. There's a lot of states that have legalized it and everything. And so here we are, we're in Texas, where I live is in Texas. And Texas hasn't necessarily legalized it, but they've done something that's kind of interesting where Delta 8, Delta 9, which is, I guess, a strand of hemp or something like that. It's essentially weed. Like, it's weed. Yeah. Okay. And you can buy it in these little stores, right? In these stores. So, but it's not like legal like some other places like Colorado or Washington or, some other places. But I've always said this. I'm like, man, I hope they don't do it. I really do. I hope they don't do it, because it's not that weed itself is so bad. Okay. It's just like, and honestly, I think alcohol is awful too. Like, it's not that weed itself is so bad. It's just that if you make it like accessible like that, and I think especially if people are drinking too, okay, because drinking has become so socialized. It's like, it's at every event, every sporting, everything. It's all over the place. Like, you can't go anywhere without not being alcohol. So alcohol's everywhere. So now all of a sudden, if you throw weed in the mix, like, you combine those two, and we got a problem. Alcohol and weed. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. I'm like, you got a real problem. You put those two together. So anyway, I don't know. I just always was like, as I grew up, I'm like, man, I hope they don't put that here. I hope they don't legalize that here, honestly. Yeah. Which was funny. When I was a kid, I was like, man, I can't wait for this to be legal. Man, I can't wait.
Do whatever I want. Well, the biggest problem is the decision-making process that happens in people's brains. I think about some of the stupid stuff I did as a teenager. And frankly, I have three teenage boys in my house right now. And, thank goodness we're off of, spring break, and they just went back to school this morning. And so, my wife's exhausted, and I think today's her day off, man, especially with as much as I travel. Nice. She's like, weeks like last week where the boys are home all day long. And, anyway, we usually have 10 teenagers at my house at any given time. And so, extra fridges and all that. But the key is, especially for boys, the decision-making process until you're about 20 something, 22, or, your brain's not even fully developed till you're 25. So with impulse and all these other things, then you mix in some of these, alcohol and weed and stuff, and your ability to actually think through something. One of my sons in particular the kid's a crack up, but I'll tell you what, his impulse is so off the charts that if he thinks that it's for some obscure, stupid reason in the back of his head, he thinks it might get him a little attention with, some girls or something, man, he's on it. Jumping on a sled, when it's snowing out here, that's that white stuff that falls that, you guys in Texas don't experience very often. But, there's a video of him jumping on a sled like it's a surfboard, and he hits the bottom of the hill, and there's a little jump down there, and it just launches him, and he lands right, he's like flies like 10, 15 feet, lands right on his side. And he's like, oh, rolling around like he's, that had to hurt. And, but again, as a teenager, did I do stupid stuff like that? Yeah, absolutely. But, he's doing stuff like that without the alcohol and the weed.
Right.
And so you start adding all these kind of stuff in it. And it's just, it's not that I, want to criticize anybody that does that. It's just, you can't mix that stuff in and expect people to make smart decisions. It's just,
Mm-mm.
it just
Yeah.
doesn't happen.
And I think about what you just said, like, too. I thank God that this did not exist when I was a kid.
Oh boy.
If this existed, because you're talking about, camera. Oh my gosh. I would have gotten so much trouble because we would have been they would have been awful. I could just think of the stupid stuff I would have done with a camera in my pocket. Oh my
Well,
God.
and so everybody else is videoing all the stupid stuff you're doing.
Yeah, I can't imagine, like, what do these kids do?
Yeah.
Like, I know I would be toast. Seriously, I'd have just been like, I'd have been so screwed.
Yeah.
But, yeah, so, drugs and alcohol, that was a thing I had to put down too, growing up. I had to put all that down. And I think back, and I do think this, I guess another thing I'm grateful for is I try to again, look at, okay, what am I grateful for through the experience? Because this was the journey I went through. So one of the things I'm grateful for was I got a lot of those like wild, seeds out early, where a lot of people, you see that even if they have a good family structure, they got the, mom and dad are still together and all that kind of stuff, no divorce. And so they have a very, very, I guess, sheltered kind of a lifestyle. And then when they go to college, a lot of times they make a lot of mistakes and they go off the deep end. I've seen this where kids that were like perfect little kids in high school and everything, boom, they go to college and it's like a free for all, mom and dad aren't around anymore.
Yeah.
And I can do what I want. And they go crazy and they get in a bunch of trouble. But guess what? Now they're adults. Okay. And it's not a slap on the wrist. Okay. Yeah. When I was a kid, again, I did some stupid stuff. And but it was still, in perspective, I got a slap on the wrist. I'm grateful, and I was able to navigate through it. And yeah, it was a lot of work to get out of that hole, but do that as an adult and see what happens. Do what I did as an adult.
Oh yeah.
And you know what I'm talking about? Like you're going to prison. So I look back and I'm like, man, comparatively, like, I'm so grateful that I got a lot of that stupid stuff out as a kid and learn lessons. I got to burn my hand on that stove as a kid and go, crap, I got to burn it over and over and go, oh man, that thing hurts. Instead of doing it as an adult and having a permanent scar, and a lot of this stuff, it doesn't impact me when it comes to jobs and things like that. You know what I mean? Like, so grateful that I got to experience some things early rather than later,
Well, and I think one of the most fortunate things for you going through all of that, number one, I think that built a much stronger foundation for who you are today because you've experienced that. And I think the college kid scenario that you were talking about, those kids growing up in what you would assume would be like a stable household. I think the number one problem with the quote, quote, stable households is they do too much for their kids. And again, I can't remember exactly who said it, but they said for especially wealthy people, if you are well off, what's the number one way that you can help your kids? And the guy's response was, don't do too much. Because if you're providing everything for that kid and not making that kid do chores and earn money, do extra chores to make more money. It's like if you want to go to, the convenience store and buy a soda and a chip, well, you better have your own money for that. You better have earned it yourself. Otherwise, too bad. I'm not going to buy that for you. Whereas I think there's far too many parents where it's just too easy to just say, oh, you know what? I don't want to fight with this kid. I don't want to hear him complaining all the way. I'll just buy him something. But I think the mentality that they're establishing and the pattern that they're establishing by doing that is, it'll come back to bite them because then, like you said, once they get out on their own a little bit, and they're out from under the thumb of the parents, then they just go crazy. And, you know, a lot of them just totally screw themselves up. But it's,
Yeah, and you got all these other outside influences, all these other kids in college and doing all this other stuff and parties and da 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 da. And like, you know, I'm glad I didn't. So I didn't really go to college either. I mean, I went to community college for, you know, maybe a semester or two. My dad was one of the things he did is he was like, "Hey, I'll match you again, dollar for dollar, you know, towards college.
Mhm.
You know, there's community college here. It's, you know, it's pretty affordable. This, that, and the other." And, you know, I barely graduated high school. Let me tell you that right now. School was not my thing. Okay. I barely graduated
Yeah.
high school. Didn't care for school that much. And because I just don't like being forced to learn stuff that has no relevancy in the real world.
Yeah.
Like I don't need to learn, you know, algebra or, you know, just like, okay, I got a calculator. All right. I don't need to really know that. It's not relevant. I'm sorry. Like there's so much stuff that don't get me started on school. There's so much stuff they teach you in school that like, come on, man. Now we got ChatGPT. I don't ever need to know that ever.
I'm with you, man. I have a daughter that's a freshman in college right now, but starting probably 2 or 3 years ago, I basically said, look, unless you're going to be a lawyer or a doctor or, you know, an electrical engineer, something specific like that, where you have to have advanced degrees for it, college is a waste of time. And I think about, you know, I went through college, you know, 20 some years ago when, I got a few years on you, buddy. So back then it was a little bit different because a lot of jobs you had to have a degree to get hired. But nowadays, no way. I mean, the crap that they teach you in university, and you're paying them to teach you this crap. And I
to
just
indoctrinate you on things.
No,
I'm
the Mike Rowe guy, man. I love Mike Rowe, everything he says about trade school and, you know, learning a skill. And like you said, it doesn't matter what you do. If you pour your energy into it, you can get successful at it. And you know what? Let's use that as a transition to segue, man. Isn't that the podcast speak?
Let's do a segue.
Yeah, segue into what you're doing now, man.
Well, so again, I was in the auto industry, did that for a few years, kept hitting the glass ceiling there though, and was very successful. But again, management didn't want to move me up.
Of course not, man.
And
You're making them bank.
I know they didn't want to promote me. I wanted to move up though, and I didn't want to be a car salesman forever. It was like, you know, and so I remember I had to go. Okay. I had to make that decision to leave. And again, leaving something I was the best at. And so I did. I took a leap of faith, jumped into financial services, hit the bottom. Okay. You know what I mean? Like when you're at the top and you jump, be prepared to hit the bottom. Okay. If you're not prepared for that, then you probably shouldn't jump. Be prepared to hit the bottom. I was prepared. I had finances and resources and all that. I took that jump, man, that parachute didn't open. It was like, I hit the bottom, like, ow, that hurt.
Yeah.
And no, it was rough. My first year in financial services was really, really rough. And I figured out that, okay, I was really good at sales from the auto industry, but there was nobody bringing people into me. Okay. There was no like dealership where people are walking in to talk about their finances. It just doesn't work that way. Like I got to go out and get it. Okay. So that was the struggle. So I was good at sales, but I wasn't good at marketing. Okay. In the auto industry, they had the commercials, they had all this stuff. So they brought people to me, you know, and I just had to be a great salesperson. So anyway, I get into financial services and again, hit the bottom, wasn't good at the marketing. And so that's what I had to learn. I was like, man, I got to learn this marketing thing. I have to figure out how to, you know, become visible, how to become a thought leader, how to, you know, raise awareness, all these different things. And so I started to learn all that. That's kind of, you know, fast forward, I got a few years later, that's where me and you met, which was the video marketing boot camp that we were going through, because I knew I needed to now take it to video and get on video.
Now this is prior to COVID, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. And, which was great. It was awesome. I got you know, got all those skills right before COVID. So I was ready for it.
Yeah.
And but yeah, so anyways, doing financial services, and you know, let's rewind just a second. So I'm in financial services. It's things are kind of rough, going through a hard time, and I'm doing everything. I'm doing all these different networking. I'm going to, you know, the BNI, and I'm going to team referral networking groups, and I'm going to just all these different networking groups. I remember going to American Payroll Association and the HR Association. I remember just going to all these different groups. I'm trying happy hour socials. I'm like just trying to get, you know, that's what they teach you, network. What does that mean? Okay. Like, all right, let me just go to all these networking groups. Nothing was working. I mean, it would work little things here and there.
Yeah.
But man, the effort you'd had to put in to get something to work, and it just wasn't really working consistently. So finally, though, I come across this group, and it's a career transition group. They met at this church, and I go into that group, and I saw and I could identify with these people because, again, 2008, 2009, I got let go from Harley Davidson. And I remember what I went through getting let go. I remember the fear and anxiety and stress and depression, and I actually started drinking again. Okay. I mean, like it impacted me a lot. It almost threw me off my game. You know, again, I was just transforming my life, right? And like I got let go, and it could have easily shifted me back in the other direction. Yeah. And I remember that stress and anxiety and fear and depression and all of that. And so I'm walking in this room, and I see 100 senior level executives. Okay. And I'm young, and I'm seeing all these extinguished people, like experience, like people I'm intimidated by. Right.
Yeah.
And I'm like, but they're like down and out and depressed, and their job search was taking them forever, taking them a year and a half. One guy was 28 months.
Wow.
And the mental, like, just beat down that they're going through. And so anyways, I go in this room and I identify, I see myself in them. And I remember what it's like feeling like you're in quicksand. And the harder your struggle, the quicker you sink. Matter of fact, I was going through it in that moment as I was in financial services because it was my first year. And again, even though I was employed, even though I was working, I was still sinking. And I remember what that felt like. That financial, you know, you're sinking financially, you know, it's not a good feeling. And, you know, all those thoughts you're having, do I need to sell my house? What do I got to do? Like, you know, you're worried. Yeah. You're concerned. Yeah. And anyway, so I walk in this group and I see these folks that are dealing with the same issues. And I'm like, I can help these people. Not only can I help them financially, like, cause there's all this financial impact that happens when you're in career transition. So not only can I help them, you know, with my business, but I thought about it though. I was like, you know, I want to help them with the root fear, the root cause, which is the income. Like, how can I help them get back to work?
Right.
How can I help them with that? If I can help them with that, like, that will separate me from everybody else. Right. And I'll be able to make a real impact, you know? So I didn't really know how I was going to do that. I just knew I needed to, and I knew I didn't need to leave that room. I just needed to keep attending, and I kept coming. And I remember every time someone would land a job, they would tell their story, and they would get up and they would say, you know, it was networking. And it was so-and-so they met, they connected, this dot connected to that dot. It's not what you know, it's who you know, right? And I'm like, okay. Kind of a light bulb went off. I'm like, well, that's what I'm learning right now is networking. Like, I'm becoming an expert at network. Like, okay, maybe I can help them with that. Mm-hmm. So that was the first kind of light bulb that went off. I was like, okay, I can help them network. So what I did is I went on to LinkedIn And I started to connect with recruiters online. And back in the day of LinkedIn, this was back in the day where you could literally just go connect. And I don't advise people to do that now. Matter of fact, if you do that now, you'll get your account shut down. Okay. But this is back in the day when you could do that. So I would type in recruiter and I'm like,
give me a time frame of when this was.
Okay, let's see. We got into, this was probably 2017.
Wow. Okay. So not that long ago.
Yeah, 2017.
Yeah. So back then, though, LinkedIn was basically just like literally a job search type of a platform.
Yeah, I mean, it started to shift a little bit, right? But yeah, at that time, like, again, you could get away with a lot more than you could today. You kind of push the envelope on some things, some different types of practices.
Yeah.
Again, like, I would not advise anyone to do this. I would not advise you to go click, connect.
No. I'm just saying that
you'll get shut down.
The purpose of, and I think the primary reason that people use LinkedIn now is a lot different than it was, 6-7 years ago.
Oh, 100%. Ever since like Microsoft bought them, it changed a lot. And so I started connecting with these recruiters online and built a big network of recruiters. But then I would go, after they would connect with me, I'd go reach out to them and send them a message. And I'd say, hey, I got this group of job seekers I'm trying to help. Can we meet for coffee? Can we sit down and talk? Okay. And so I would meet for coffee and meet these recruiters, and they loved it. All I was doing was just connecting dots. Okay. Connecting dots. People were getting jobs. It was amazing. And then I got recognized and was invited. This was in 2017. Got invited to go onto a podcast. It was the first podcast I ever been on. And I got the bug. Okay. I went on this podcast, and about a month or two later, I had my podcast, and so that's where the Who You Know show got started. Cause I remember thinking, man, we got to do this. Like, how cool would that be? Essentially to do the same thing, which is the Who You Know show. We'll invite recruiters, hiring managers, career coaches, anybody that can support job seekers, right? Because job seekers is the audience. I want to attract the job seekers. Well, I need to have resources. I need to make these recruiters accessible, right? And I can just, again, we can use the show as an incubator for that. Because think about that. All these job seekers would have to do is reach out to the recruiter and say, hey, I heard you on the Who You Know show. Yeah. Instant door opener, right? We did it on LinkedIn Live. Oh my gosh. I was a beta tester of LinkedIn Live. I was one of the first people, in the country to get it. And I got LinkedIn Live, and the show goes, and it's like, boom, like when they did that beta, whenever your account would go live, literally notified your entire network.
Yeah.
So boom, all of a sudden you had a giant audience on. And we would tell the job seekers in the audience to put a hashtag what they were searching for. And then we had recruiters in the audience too. They were in the live comments. So the recruiters would then go look at them, right? Based off of if they said HR and the recruiter's looking for an HR, position or whatever, they'd go look at them, and they were connecting in the comments, and people were landing jobs from the comments section of the live stream. It was crazy.
That's amazing. That's so awesome.
It was so cool.
Yeah.
Right. And anyway, so I've just kind of built and supported the job seeker community with all kinds of different things. And now I've got, online training programs and this thing called the Career Transition Summit that I teach them strategies on how to get out of the black hole, how to get noticed by employers, and how to close the deal too, because it's important that we not only increase your interviews, but we get you to a point where you can close those interviews too. So, that's something I'm extremely passionate about, is helping those folks, again, recover their cash flow, recover their income, at the same time helping them, minimize some of that financial impact that they're going through with my financial services. So that's really what I do now.
And that is from a kid that was at 13 was a felon. No, I that's, this being a true crime podcast, I'm sure a lot of people are like going, what is going on? Why are we talking to this guy that's a recruiter, financial services? And the whole reason is because, frankly, I think your story is one of the best I've ever heard about, you know what, whatever crap you are miring in right now, it doesn't matter, because you can always start climbing out of the hole, staying. And who was it that said, if you're broke, if you're born into poverty in the United States, that is not your choice. Staying there is your choice. And, how you proceed in life, it's like nobody is held back. Nobody is actually, this whole notion that you can't make it because of, who your parents are or where you were born or what race you are, all of that kind of stuff. I hear stories like Les Brown. Les Brown was born, if I remember right, he was born with his twin brother, during the, shortly after World War II, on the floor of an abandoned warehouse. And yet you look at Les Brown now, and, he's getting up in years, but he's kind of passed it on to his children. He's got he's massive. I mean,
yeah, that guy's amazing.
Co-authors books and has this massive podcast. But the guy is like, this motivational speaker for decades.
Oh yeah.
And a lot of it is because of the foundation of what he was when he was a kid, but he didn't let that hold him down. And more importantly, I mean, if you look at Les Brown or Ben Carson, guys like this, that they were born in extreme poverty, and yet they've become these massive figures. And, if they can do it, anybody else can do it. And it's just a matter of choice. And that's the whole reason I wanted to have you on, is because you've made choices, and you've lived your life thus far with intention, and you've turned an absolute tragic story where you started into something that you're now on your way to becoming this massive success. And I saw that you teamed up with Elena Cardone, with talking about child trafficking and stuff like that. And that's another thing that caught my eye about it. And that's something that, being in the true crime space, and I work with detectives that specialize in sex trafficking and sexual assaults and stuff like that. And that's just a whole nother story that, I think we may even be able to work together to help, team up with some of that stuff.
Yeah, I'd love to connect you with some of the resources that I'm connected with. Again, like I said, in my story, there's some sexual trauma in there as well. And like, again, I think there, like the back in the day, the AOL chat rooms and stuff like that, man, there was a lot of stuff going on, and we had some stuff in my house, and it's crazy to think about, but,
it's amazing. Yeah. And like you said, thank goodness. I mean, I was way too much of a idiot kid that had smartphones been around, but I heard just, I think last week, that one of the saying, in smartphones, you're not just giving your kid access to the world, you're giving the world access to your kid. And
that's so true. Oh my God.
Yeah. And I just think if the world actually had access to me when I was a kid, I wouldn't be here, and so that's another thing. That's just a whole new aspect that every parent has to fight with. And, every bit of society, every person that is actually a contributor to society has to take that kind of stuff in mind, because, when you're talking about protecting children and, helping kids get out of tough situations, there's a whole new dimension to it. And that is the cell phone and the internet and, the access that they have to just bad stuff. But more importantly, the bad people have access to them. And
yeah, it's crazy. Yeah. It's crazy when you get into that rabbit hole. It gets crazy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I definitely think that, kind of back to what we were talking about before, which is, the first step if you're not where you want to be, the first step is really to make a decision. And like, you have to plant the flag. I mean, you got to draw that line in the sand. Enough is enough. Like literally you have to be just so committed, because it's going to take that commitment. You have to make that decision. And that's really the first step. And again, for me, that decision wasn't made willingly. So I'm actually grateful for that, because I don't know if I would have done it, to be honest with you. I don't know if I would have done it willingly. It wasn't like, I think back in my mindset as a kid, I wasn't ready to leave the lifestyle that I was living, and so I hadn't had enough is enough, right? Like,
right.
You have to kind of have enough is enough to where it's like, I'm done, and make that decision. And so luckily for me, that decision was made for me. Right. And then the next step is change your environment. So first is make a decision. And that next is change your environment. Right. You got to get away from the people you're connected with. And then it's the power of connections, the power of relationships. It's who do you want to be connected to?
Yeah.
Who is doing the things you want to be doing? Okay. So if you know you don't want this in your life, whatever this is, what do you want? I need a target. And now who's doing those things, right? And the easiest way to get from A to Z when you're lost is to pull over and ask somebody who's been there for directions.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Well, and I'll take it even one step further. Personally, I believe that the moment you make that decision, the people that will actually help you get to where you want to go will start appearing in your life. But they are not.
You'll see them.
They are not going to come there until you actually make that decision and set that goal. So,
yeah, what is that thing? There's actually a term for it. I can't remember the name of the term. Where, like, if you say I want to buy a Ford F-150, a red Ford F-150, and then that's all of a sudden that's all you see.
Yeah.
Right. I don't know if you remember the term, but there's actually a scientific term for this.
I know what you're talking about, but it's
it's
one of but setting a goal, man, that kicks all sorts of just crazy things where the universe just starts just ascending on you, and
you start to see it. It was always there.
Yeah.
Like, right. It's not like more Ford F-150s just like popped out of nowhere. No, they were always there, but now you're focused on them, right? You see them now. Your subconscious is just looking for those opportunities. And so if you don't know what you want, it's going to be hard for you to, to land in there. I mean, it's going to be just luck if you land in something, you know what I mean? If you don't even know what you want.
Yeah. Well,
if you know what you want, you can make steps to get there. And you're right. I think the universe, God, will bring those things to you, put the right people in place. And it's all about people. Like, I'm going to tell you right now, as I look through my story and I was writing my book, I'm like, it's people. It's people. It's all about who you know. Seriously. It's all these connected dots that you go, wow, okay, this person, right? It was my dad. It was the sales manager. It was the general manager who didn't like me, who caused me to jump ship, right? Like, even the negative experiences, I'm grateful for that. Thank you for not opening that door for me, right? God had bigger plans for me, but it's the people through your story that help you to be who you're supposed to be. So
yeah, well,
I think it's important. It's all about who you know.
Absolutely. Well, and I think that's why your podcast is so appropriately named, man, Who You Know. So yeah, Trevor, man, we could go on forever, but I want to end it here pretty quick to let you get on with your day, man. I know you got other things to do. So, but yeah.
Well, we got an eclipse coming soon.
Oh, yeah. Is that going to go over the top of you?
Yeah, it's coming. I got to put my...
Got your special glasses on? Oh, look at that, man. Yeah, you're all over it.
I'm ready to go. Let's go.
No. You know what? I think it was last year we had an eclipse go over the top of us in the middle of one of my boys' football game. Like the first half was I think it was right close to halftime. It was when it wasn't ever 100%, but it was close. But yeah,
That's pretty cool.
It was pretty wild. It was hard to keep the boys.
I don't think I've ever actually seen one. I think there was one recently that I just didn't do. So I'm gonna go out there and check it out. See what's up.
Oh yeah, no, you gotta go see it once. So listen, buddy, I appreciate it. And yeah, so tell me, how can people find your podcast?
Yeah, they can just go to whoyouknow.show, whoyouknow.show, or you can go anywhere, podcasts are. So Apple, Spotify, YouTube, anywhere that you listen to podcasts, you'll find us. Who You Know Show.
Mm-hmm.
And ya is YA. Okay, we're in Texas. Who ya know, not who you know. But yeah, come connect with us. We'd love to support you in any way we can.
Yeah. So anybody out there that either yourself or somebody else needs to be connected and get a better employment, better situation, then hook up with Trevor. And this guy, love your story, man. I absolutely love your story, because there's so many folks nowadays that just don't know. They don't know what they don't know, number one, and number two, they don't know how to get out of their situation. And, most people, I think, that are anywhere remotely close to, needing your services, I don't think are moving down the path of crime. But there's always people that somebody, you're one or two connections away from somebody famous. I think you're also one or two connections away from somebody that really needs help. So, you can absolutely be a conduit to helping them get out of whatever the hole that they've dug and start making the best of their lives. So that's what it's all about.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
100%. That's one of the reasons why I started to write the book, and I was putting my story out there, and people were just like, oh my gosh, when I was just putting little pieces of it out. And, the response I got back, I was like, okay, I got to do this.
Yeah.
Because it can help a lot of people, you know what I mean? And there's a lot of people that had trauma in their life, a lot of people that have things going on. And so anyway, it can help. And so I'm grateful to be able to use that for good, So yeah, guys, connect with me, and I'd love to help you in any way I can.
Absolutely. All right, brother. Well, any particular links, then send those to me, and we'll get them in the show notes stuff. So
awesome. Appreciate you.
Can't tell you thanks enough, man. This is absolutely awesome. So take care and keep doing the good work, buddy.
Thank you.
Be good. Thanks for joining us. Your attention today brings us one step closer to exposing and eliminating the evil that brings crime to our communities. Hit subscribe and share this episode. Together, we will bring justice to every victim.